beautiful cat.
Yeah, that's Dustin. He's the best. He's my co-host.
Okay. Hi, Dustin.
He's like the dog of cats. You don't have allergies, do you?
No.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been trying to exercise more. It definitely becomes more real. Like I'm in my 40s now, so it's like just starting to crumble and fall. Like it's starting to,
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
like you could see. Oh, okay, this shit's gonna be. You have to start doing things to just be able to like sitting in this chair for like a couple hours will sometimes hurt me. That's kind of recent,
Yeah. Sciatica, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So what do you do? You doing like the boxing workouts or?
Well, this morning I did a weights workout, and then I did a 20-minute ab workout.
Yeah.
That just murders me. And then I did a kickboxing workout with my daughter.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it, and I feel like it's making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it kind of like I exercise regularly too. It's almost like stand up in that like you have to be willing to do something that's uncomfortable in the short term, so you get long term benefits. Like I think it's a similar mentality. It's like if you just want every set to be good and you want to feel good about yourself, like you're not going to last through the first year. I think exercising can be kind of similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I don't take enough risks at mics. I think that's something that could really benefit me. But I know what you mean. Willing to live with some discomfort,
Yeah.
and get better.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the risky sets. I always remember when I see you do a risky set. Like there was one set at Ben's tune-up that you did before the pandemic that I remember. I don't even know if you want to talk about it on the podcast, but you just talked about like I think it was like a sexual experience from when you were like young or something. Like it was just a night where you were like, I'm just gonna, and then I never heard you say that again. You just kind of like shared some like I always love it when I see you do a set that's like you just say some things and that you never say again.
Yeah.
Because you have great material. Like I love watching you like work on the like Grover Cleveland. Like it's fun to watch you like get a bit good and punch it up. But then like when you do a risky set, I'm always like, ooh, it's a special treat tonight.
Yeah. Actually, you've gotten a lot better over crowd work over the years, and I personally have not. I keep like dipping my toe in and then like, nope, not for me. And I need to really just commit to some bad sets. I mean, that's what it's going to take.
Totally. Yeah.
I just need to say, like, I'm going to have bad sets. And I hate bad sets.
Yeah, I know.
But but that's what I need to do. That's how I will develop crowd work. It's the only way. Give myself permission to have some terrible sets. Yeah. I'll tell you something funny about you mentioned being 40 and feeling things starting to go a little bit.
Yeah.
That happened to me, especially in my 50s. Like the minute I hit 50, I'm like, kidney stones, and suddenly have to take a statin for my cholesterol and blood pressure, and all these things are happening. And so, like, that's when I really started like trying to get under control and working out. And I was on my bike one morning. It was like 26 degrees, and I was dressed up like a seal. I had every inch of my body covered in layers, including a mask. And,
night vision goggles.
Yeah, goggles. But didn't quite go for the night vision. But at some point, I take my glasses off for some reason. I'm looking in a mirror, and my eyes were really droopy. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm like, this looks like Bell's palsy, because that's what happens. You have a stroke, a minor stroke, and it causes that. And I'm like, wow. And what cracks me up about it is the thought that instead of like going, oh my God, I've had a stroke, I thought, great, I have strokes now. It was like one more thing.
Now I got to get stroke pills.
Yeah. But then I take the thing off my head, and it turns out it was pressing down and making it was the stuff on my forehead pressing down and making that droopy look. It was
So you haven't had your first stroke yet. That's good. I think the heart attack's like what's going to get me based on my metrics. It's the statin is going to be happening at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the dudes in my family like have a heart attack when they're in their 50s. But
That
most
ain't
of them
good.
were like chain smoking alcoholics too. So I think I'm a little bit healthier. But yeah, you definitely just got to start having less and less things you like. Like I'm just crushing caffeine right now because I quit drinking alcohol a couple of years ago. So I'm just having as much caffeine as I want. But I'll probably have to. It's just like less of the stuff you enjoy. But I think leaning into the pain, like the workouts, and then the comedy, stand-up has taught me so much about life because it is like being uncomfortable. Like the thing you were saying about having bad sets. Like I'm like a crazy about data, so I count my sets. So like in 100 chunks, like so for this next 100, I'm trying to be as experimental as possible. To try to really like, exactly what you said, like have bad sets. I mean, if I'm like hosting for a real show, I'm not going to like ruin it. I'll do like my material. But like if I'm at Root Bar or the Odd or even Nashville Music Hall to try to just take risks, fail in front of the new comics, but hope that like next year I'll be better than I would have been because I humiliated myself more.
That's what open mics are for. It's really, really hard to commit to it.
Yeah.
But how does your writing process work?
Ooh, that's a good topic. Yeah, so that's I wanted to ask you that too. I when I started out, I wrote everything out just like in a computer. It was like just years of writing everything out, trying to memorize it. It was all bad, and then now I'm trying to get more and more to just like a bullet point in a conversational moment with a feeling, you know. But I still think it's helpful to write like descriptive words and stuff like that. I notice people like Cody and Jess and people that like seem to be kind of ranting. They still have like a really nice descriptive words, so I think I'm trying to like be more loose and experimental, but also still get the words just right. And then if it goes in the act, if it sticks around long enough, then it pretty much gets solidified. But I'm trying to start it out just being like, I'm at Root Bar or the Odd, and it's like, this is what happened this week, and I'm just trying to become that kind of comic that can not write and memorize so much. I don't know. It had mixed results, Yeah. What about you?
I think over the years I've like two of the bits that I've come up with. I've written out. For the most part, the way it used to work is that I would like have life experiences, and I would like. Come up with a thought. I'd throw it on Facebook. So it's almost like my notepad, just throwing it out on Facebook.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that I keep it.
So you go public with the idea first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I used to worry, like, what if they saw that and then they see you doing it in a mic? But it has never happened.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I'm not that popular.
Yeah. And even if you did, it's going to be different on stage than it is in Facebook, too. So even if you were that popular, I think that'd still be fine.
Yeah. And then like you work it through the mics. Like you say, there's some things you just have to have exact words. You start memorizing the words that worked and say it just that way every time. But then there's always, you leave room around the edges for like interpreting it for the room.
Right.
But they're like, there's I don't know if you've ever even seen me do this bit, but there's one that ends up with the line, "So that makes me probably the only person who strangled a rat to death with kite string by accident."
I do know that.
And that, to me, you got to say that exactly
that's like
that way.
the rhythm, the words. Yeah, when you get something that's gold like that, you're like, okay, I got it. So do you record them? How do you record your sets and go back and listen? Or
I've started. I don't do as many as I probably would benefit from, but I've started doing more of them. And yeah. Like they do, it does help. It does help you like figure out your wording. Because there's sometimes when you don't communicate the idea, you just realize I haven't said the thing I mean.
They don't
to say.
know what the hell you're talking about, even though you know what you're talking about. Is that what you mean? Like they don't know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
when I listen back and watch myself back, I see that. I'm like, oh, I thought that I had made things clear. They don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because if I was watching it, I wouldn't know.
Right. Yeah.
That's your reaction to it. But that's how it's been all along. That's how I've been doing the writing. But right now, what's going on is that I used to be in sales and
Furniture,
inside
right?
sales. Yeah, furniture.
When I started, I think you were still doing that. You would talk about it. You'd wear the suit.
Yeah, that's what. That was my work clothes.
I think we all kind of missed the suit a little bit. Are you aware that we missed the suit?
Yeah, I can put it on every once.
You don't have to, but sorry, I'm derailing your main line.
Yeah, they weren't great suits.
But everyone else looked so bad that it was like any suit was like, who's this guy?
There you go.
And you always had like the little like cocktail, you know?
Yeah.
That was like when I came into comedy, that was like the art of that era, you know? And then there was like jellyfish shirt era art. It's like Bob Dylan or Taylor Swift, you know? There's like the different eras of, yeah.
I wonder what it is now. I think it's T-shirt art.
Yeah. Shorts, buff and bald. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I'm like older than almost all of the comics. I'm 44. I'm older than like almost everyone I do any show with anywhere. So that's one of the many things that interests me about you is you're older than me. And you've been doing it since the beginning of Asheville comedy. So I feel like when you come in on your first year, there's just like so much ego and expectations. I got on my first show and there's like, but how many of those people are actually going to last? And then I see like I think you have like a really humility, you like, probably life as well as comedy, I think the longer you stick around, the more you see people come up after you that are getting on more shows, and you kind of, in order to stick around, you really do need to kind of embrace failure and humility,
Yeah.
Were you like that before you started comedy, or?
Here's the thing about the humility, and thank you for saying that, but you ever watch, are you familiar with Star Trek? Like, you watch Star Trek?
I mean, just a little. I'm Star Wars, but yeah, I just kind of know of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's these characters called Vulcans, and they're all about like
Spock, right? He's
yeah, and they're all super logical all the time. And everything is logic. Everything is logic. And then as the years pass by, they develop the concept that everybody, that Vulcans are super passionate, emotional race, and they had to develop this logic discipline. It's not like who they are. It's they had to develop this logic discipline
in order to function and not destroy themselves. They had to
exactly, and I think that was a nice nuance they put on it. But I think about it right now because I have a giant ego and a lot of vanity.
You do?
Yes.
Now?
Yes, absolutely.
Huh.
Absolutely. And the humility is like a mechanical thing for me to say, I recognize this. I recognize it's not helpful or useful, and, to get it under control.
I feel like you just proved that you don't have a huge ego by saying you're aware that you have one.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I guess, none of us would really be up there talking into a microphone if we didn't have a pretty big ego, though. You know what I mean? Like, so there is, even the most like humble among us, it's still like there's some narcissism happening because it's still like everybody listen to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to. I go in front of a room to hear their laughter, to show off, to be like treated. Like that laughter is just like waves of stuff washing all over me, and just I need it.
Yeah.
And it's something I just have to be aware of. Like have to like consciously discipline myself to look from outside and know, hey, enjoy the feeling. Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
But then realize it in context.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for me now. Is that it's like this is it. Like this is happening right now. Like I feel like this is like kind of like Paris in the 20s, the comedy in the Southeast. Like I did Rude Bar last night. It was great. It was weird. Like there's not some next thing that's going to get me famous and a bunch of money. Like, this is it, and that's like such the gift of just being middle-aged, because when I was in my 20s trying to make it as a musician, it's like, oh, we got to get to the orange peel, we got to get to the and I feel like I see people with that mentality, which serves you well when you're maybe younger, but now it's like just being a part of this community and getting to do shows is kind of enough,
Yeah.
And now I got the podcast. I don't know, like do you have a feeling of like Is there somewhere you still want to get with your comedy?
Oh,
yeah.
It's just, it kind of circles way back around to where we were talking about writing, how I used to and how I do now. Because, like, now is kind of a problem for me. Because when I was in sales, I had these big, giant periods of time where I couldn't do anything productive at work. I had all my follow-up done. I couldn't be in front of a customer. There's nothing I could do, And during that time, I was able to, like, wool gather and, think about things that happened and put it into context. And that's where a lot of my comedy ideas come from. And right now, I have every single square inch of time. It's like between, I do tours for a local company. I do, I drive Uber. I try and get to at least 2 open mics a week just to stay in shape for shows. And then I've got the shows. And it's like you owe every second to something or somebody.
Yeah.
And, I made a commitment. I work out with, I've got 2 adult kids, 30 and 25. And I do kickboxing with my daughter 3 times a week and lift with my son 3 times a week, so there's no time for me to just, it's almost like Groundhog Day. I wake up, I work out, I get lunch, I go do whatever work, maybe a mic, maybe not, and then go back, go to bed. And there's no time to just
sit and be a philosopher and think about the bits with a notepad, like sit in the coffee shop for 2 hours and just write.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though, because it's like you are amongst the people, though, because I almost feel like you can go too far in the direction where you are just in the room writing the stuff, whereas like you're talking, like for your jobs, you're interacting with like so many different types of people. Like that has to help your brain, and you're talking, and you just like you're living life, but through the experiences. But you're saying it'd be nice to have like some time each week where you could sit down and try to like wrangle all those experiences into bits and writing and jokes and
realize that they are. I mean, like something that happened to me just Saturday, and I don't know how to turn this into stage work. I turned it into a Facebook post.
Let's work it out now. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So one of the Ingles I go to has a comically bad deli. I mean, the food's fine, but the people there, you'll stand there and wait forever.
Takes forever, yeah.
And then somebody will come over, and then they won't know what to do, and they'll won't know how to ring you up, and just really, really bad. But I went in there Saturday. And a nice woman comes over. I went to their little Chinese buffet that they have, the chopsticks.
I know the Chinese Ingles food.
Yeah.
That's funny right there.
And so first off, none of their signs matched the food in front of them. Like they didn't, whatever happened that day, nobody knew to take the signs.
It says like egg rolls, and then there's like something like this clearly not.
Exactly.
General Tso's.
So I was like, I told the woman, I'll have whatever, whatever that is in that corner in a small container. She goes, okay, honey, I'll get that for you. And then I said, but what is it? And she goes, I said, is it General Tso's? Is it sweet and sour? And she goes, oh, I don't know, honey. You're just going to have to eat it. and we're both just laughing our asses off. And she's not dumb or incompetent. She hadn't been trained.
Yeah.
That's her thing. I didn't somebody there doesn't know how to train people, and maybe their turnover is so fast that whatever.
I can serve you that, and I can sell it to you. I cannot tell you what it is, but you could tell me after you eat it. Why don't you just take a bite of it right now? You're back there with the food. Tell me. She's like,
that moment filled me with so much joy.
So you had this light bulb that you're like, this is comedy if I can. Yeah.
I mean, because it was funny to me. I literally laughed out loud when she said that, and she laughed out loud.
Well, that's great. You guys had a human moment together.
Yeah. And sometimes you lose the human moment together on stage. You know, sometimes when you tell a story like that, it's like you're dragging the woman.
Stories are hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just like, it's like show, don't tell. That's the thing that's always hard about me is I find I look at something back and I'm like, oh, I'm summarizing what happened. I'm not like painting the picture.
Yeah, you got to give them the moments.
Yeah.
And it's...
So what would you like? You feel like, okay, so I had this experience, and there's comedy there, and then ideally, if you had the time, you would be able to sit down and kind of like write, like with on a notepad, or just think about it, or a computer. Like, what would you? How would you get that to like? Now I'm ready to take it up to whatever. The mic.
I think the first thing I would do is try and tell that story, like I just told you,
on stage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then like. Look over what happened and figure out what I can cut. Because there's some things that are necessary. The sign's not matching the food.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
The fact that they're comically bad at their jobs.
Yeah.
Is
I wonder if you need to say that because like it's almost like you kind of show that it's disorganized just by the thing, so it's almost like I'll notice that sometimes I'm like this, it's really disorganized, and then I show that it's disorganized and I go back and I go, I didn't need to even state that it was disorganized. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I could, instead of saying that I have these experiences over and over, they're comically bad, just don't do any of that setup and just have just say nobody had trained this poor woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there again, you've got a little empathy set up.
Yeah.
And it sets up why the signs are wrong, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. If
it is a very different tone being like this poor woman wasn't trained versus like these idiots at the store don't know what they're doing, which is like some people can do that, I don't like who would do that, like Stanhope, or there's a lot of comedians that are that type of comedian. These idiots don't know what the fuck.
Yeah.
Like some people can. That's not your vibe though. You're kind of like a nice
it's
guy.
It's never going to work for me. I've tried it. I've tried being like ragey and insulty, and it's just, I like a few lines of ragey every once in a while.
Yeah.
For the right bit. But it's not something I could pull off,
Yeah, I was talking to the last one, talking to Harrison Tweed about this stuff, and he was talking about like what's the emotion of the bit, which I think I heard that early on, but I may have like forgotten. Like, do you feel like you think about what the emotion is of the bit?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I'm a big fan of feeling like I like big act outs, and when I'm doing the big act outs, I'm trying to experience the moment.
You do a lot of big act outs, yeah. You'll become the scene.
Well, you know where those came from? One of the first Asheville comedy festivals I went to. I wasn't in it. I was watching it. Mm-hmm. And guy named, I think it's Joe Morgan from New York, he did this wonderful bit where it was an act out of, he introduced it as a dramatic reading of the Hall & Oates song Maneater. And he goes out on stage and he screams, it's a maneater. But not like that holding back way I just did it.
Yeah.
That man
he commits.
He didn't bring one tiny bit back to the green room with him. It was just, he dumped every bit of it out on stage. It was so serious and so real. And because of that, it was hilarious. And that really informs my act outs. I'm like, you can't do them halfway.
Yeah, I remember talking to Moira about that, and she's like, you just got to commit. Like, that was easy for her. It's like, there is like a binary thing. You're 100% in or you're not. Mm-hmm. And I have definitely found myself in the middle of a lot of bits and stories on stage being like, I don't even think I'm like 80% in, and it's not enough for these people to want to hear the rest of this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like because I tend to be more like stand there and talk and do little things like that. But yeah, it is something to behold when somebody commits like that. When you got the yelling, you got the, Mm-hmm. I'm still kind of trying to figure out if I'm that kind of comic or if I mean, that's the great thing about comedy is there's just layers, like finding your voice to me is just super compelling life work.
Yeah.
And what better way to do it than on stage where you have your editors editing you, the audience in real time. And it's like, I don't think you ever actually get all the way to 100% finding your voice, but you just keep exploring, It's like, all right, I'm going to do crowd work for a year. Or I'm going to really commit to act outs for the next 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then each time you do something like, you get a little closer to like speaking your truth.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
That's what excites me at this age, is just trying to like find my voice, speak my truth. As cliche as it sounds, it's like that's kind of what I want out of this. And now this podcast is like, this is kind of like, I think this counts as practicing comedy. This is a rep, We're going to do like an hour, and this is like more conversational, you know what I mean? So it is kind of like off the script.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this idea that this could kind of bleed into our stage voices,
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I see how it could, And I think about, when I talk about act outs, I often talk about them as big, but I think one of my favorite act outs that I've seen, Grayson Morris, I haven't seen her do stand-up
she's
in
amazing.
years.
Yeah.
But she would do this bit. I'm not going to like try and do the bit here, but it was like, if that was happening to me, and she does a little bit of just this little act out of herself, and it's subtle and funny, and it's funny because she really commits, but it's not a big, giant commit. It's a small thing.
Yeah, committing doesn't mean you have to be sweating and yelling.
Yeah.
Like, you can commit in a subtle way too.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not. I've dipped my toe in that a little bit. I've been trying this bit where I talk about what really happened. A woman walks up and says, "I love you," and it was really weird and awkward.
Yeah.
And I do this bit where I answer her like a rom-com.
Yeah.
And I have really been trying to do that subtle acting with it, like that. If somebody you've really been pining over tells you they're in love with you, like that moment, and I haven't really pulled it off yet. I've gotten some laughs.
I know that bit. Yeah, it's a funny.
So I've got to work it. I've got to figure out how to. And that's when, if I can't get it to work sometimes. Have you ever put a bit away thinking it can't work, and then you dig it out like 2 years later?
Oh, it's my favorite thing. And that's from songwriting before joke writing, that would happen. Or I'd be like I just love this chorus, and I'm just pushing on it, and it's just not working. And then a year later, I'd write like a verse, and I'd be like, "Oh, that chorus just fits in here." Mm-hmm. So I've had that happen with bits where I'm like, I just can't get this to work. And then a year later, I have a similar joke that reminds me of it, and then I snap that one back next to it, and it's like, it's proof that I'm getting better, because it's like I couldn't sell that bit to them a year ago, but now I can, and that's like the best feeling. Is like I can do a thing I couldn't do.
Yeah, it wasn't the bit; it was you.
Yeah,
it was me.
I hadn't grown into like the comedian. That's like a thing that like Mike Mello and Petey have both said on this pod, is like always save your early joke notebooks, because like you just might have not had the skill to pull them off. So go back and look at what you were trying to do in your first years, and maybe now you can actually make those bits funny. Mm-hmm. Like, do you keep organized? Like, there's always ideas scribbled down on whatever, however you do it, your phone or like napkins. Like, do you have a system for keeping organized, keeping track? Like you get a longer set. Do you have the act written down somewhere, new stuff?
Yeah, I've got an outline on Google Drive. I call it the everything set. That's like if I did every single thing that I've got. Mm-hmm. This is all, and it's written in a way that the flow works.
Right.
Like this bleeds into that bleeds into this.
What do you open with for the everything set?
Nobody gives it up, because if I'm doing the everything set, I'm selling T-shirts.
Yeah. So I figured that would be your opener or your closer. So you're coming in swinging with. Yeah. Nobody gives it up.
What's been two strong openings for me at the beginning, it's the nobody gives it up in the microphone bit.
Oh yeah, those are the classics,
and those tend to hit well. And then I can play around. Usually after that, it's something that it's been more recent that I've been working with. But you mentioned the Grover Cleveland bit.
Yeah, I was just thinking that'd be like probably a pretty good closer too.
Yeah, I dug that out. I tried that at Odd, and like it just, I wasn't ready for it yet, and like. I don't know, year, maybe 2 years later.
Oh, really? Okay.
I tried it at Root Bar. Mm-hmm. And Root Bar was the first time I did it that I felt like I was making it work. It was the first time I added the Grover Cleveland part in there.
That's the whole joke for me. That's the biggest. I mean, that's probably the biggest laugh now, right? Isn't that it's the mistaken.
Yeah, and the actual Grover is more like a big applause line.
Yeah,
it's like not. It gets laughs every once in a while.
The like getting clear on which Grover, I think that is kind of, so that's kind of an interesting thing that I love in comedy too, where it's like you think you have the bones of the joke, but then some other thing that wasn't even part of the original idea ends up being the biggest laugh,
Yeah,
like that's just amazing. And they let you know that because you have this idea what it is, and then they choose to laugh at certain parts, and then you have to. I just love that,
The microphone bit, that one came from like Cody set up a show for us in Greenville. Mm-hmm. I think it was Cody. Well, Cody was there anyway, but the mic wasn't working that night. So I literally said that to the audience. I said, "I feel like that guy in the disaster movie, And so I started trying it at open mics, and I was doing all the beginning parts of it. I know you're all very frightened, whatever. And it was like, okay, getting okay laughs.
I ask you, who among you has children? That's the big laugh for me, right? That's the you find that line.
I threw that tag in.
Among, it's got to be that old-timey language.
Right. And it's got to be delivered like, I ask you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like Charlton Heston and, what's his name? It's like an old, it reminds me of like an old movie or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Or I guess the old play is the, yeah.
But it's when that tag came in, just at an open mic at Odd, it was like, that's it. And then it went into the act. I felt good about it. And the next time I do it is in Knoxville, and it burned the place down, because the audience had told me what works.
Yeah, that probably is my favorite one of yours, or definitely one of the top ones, because there's a lot of things happening. It's like a meta bit. It's like a bit about what it's like to be a comedian, but then it's a different angle with because we all have known the mic getting glitchy, or that's just it speaks to the comics too, where you're like, I got to get up and try all this material, and the shit's not even working on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People talk about, we'll say like, that's a good time for you to do that bit when the mic doesn't work. But when the mic's not working, it's actually not the greatest time to do that bit. I need a working mic to do a bit about a mic that doesn't work. It's strange.
Yeah, no, that does make sense to me, because it's like, you're like, what if it was like this? But then if it's actually happening, if you actually do have no mic, it's like, that kind of ruins the
Doesn't make
premise.
sense.
Huh.
The Chitty Chitty Bang Bang bit I did. I tanked that one for a few years because I couldn't get it off the ground. And two things happened. Hillary and Amanda. Amanda is a friend of Hillary's, and they both like, I missed that bit. I want you to do that bit. And then I started trying it again, and then Carrie and Moira told me I had to say the words Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Mm-hmm. That if once I did that, people would recognize the tune, but I was going straight into that other version with the tune, expecting them to pick up, and they weren't. And as soon as I took that advice and started saying Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, boom.
Yeah, then you got the laugh on the...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that there's just like the littlest tweaks like that, like even there's been times where I've kind of been trying to shout the punch or give it, and then I just say it more quietly, and that actually gets a bigger laugh. There's all these just little tweaks, and if nobody had told you that, you might have not even found that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. That's like what I love, because before comedy I was like writing songs in my room, and then putting them out like in the world and the internet. But the idea with comedy is that while you're writing, there's an audience there editing you. That's everything to me, because that's so different from like painting alone, whatever the other art things I've done. So I just love that the whole, from the first time you try it to the time you record it, or you retire the bit, like there's people there, and then you start getting out to like, let's see if it hits in Tennessee, let's see if it hits in like Knoxville or Kingsport or South Carolina, and it's a little different in each place. It's just
it is neat how that happens.
Yeah.
That you have to, and there are things like, there's some relatively explicit bits that I like have to reserve for certain shows that are almost about that kind of subject matter. So
explicit, you mean like more like R-rated?
Yeah, or more like stories of sexual adventures. That I just you can't just do that
I like
with
your
every audience.
I like your new stuff with that. That's kind of another interesting, like, because I think to some degree, this podcast is like really exploring like comedy is this intangible, hard thing to figure out. So these conversations like help me get more clear. And there's this idea that like, if you're like a maniac from out of society and you get up and start talking, like there's already kind of a, what's this person going to do, you know? And if you're like, like a white bearded dad who looks like every other dad in Nashville, I think it can be a little harder. You have to like really write and say things. So it's like, I'm starting to think, when I go out of town, instead of just trying to do my best jokes, maybe I should do the jokes that present me as like an interesting, different individual. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of, I've just recently figured this out, like way too late, that people kind of want to hear somebody that they haven't heard before, or some crazy person. So, you talking about like your sexual adventures to me is kind of like, for whatever you present as for your like demographic and age, for you to get up and talk about those things is very surprising. Mm-hmm. So that's almost like a setup punch in itself, where you like people see what you look like and then you start talking about your sexual adventures and people are like, oh, okay. Like that's cool. Like that you need some of that.
But I do double down on that flip, that turnaround. That's something I'm aware of, and like I do a lot of like, I mean, the line I say, I'm nice. Mm-hmm, yeah. That's kind of like fits into that whole expectations versus, and I think people, the bit you were talking about, I did recently at Odd. That one I think worked that well that night, because it was mostly comedians who knew me.
Wait, which bit are we talking about? Are we talking about
the one about, I don't know,
dating?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And about saying stupid things to somebody who'd had a panic attack.
I know the punch you speak of.
That one worked, I think, for more an audience because y'all knew me.
Yeah.
And I think it can, trying it for an audience that isn't your friends.
Right. The trust or the awareness. I wonder if like putting it early in the set versus later, like if you establish yourself and they get to know you for like 10 minutes, then maybe you could hit them with that. Because then these strangers are like, oh, he's nice.
Yeah.
Or instead of like you come out of the gate with it, it's like, whoa, this is kind of creepy or something. I've had that happen where I'm like, oh yeah, that they know who I am at the Odd. And now nobody knows who I am. So I'm coming off a little like creepy, or like it feels unsafe. You know what I mean? Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Yeah. Exactly. People in the room would have known some context of me in real life versus some of the things I'm saying. But I used to you mentioned the suits. Mm-hmm. I loved subverting that. When you walk into a room and you're in your 50s at the time and you're wearing a coat and tie, and people think, here come the dad jokes.
Yeah.
Here comes the misogynist jokes. Here comes, and when you do material that completely
it's
lower
weird.
The bar,
like about,
really low,
like sci-fi weird stuff, and people are like, huh.
Yeah. And it completely, one of my favorite moments, the night I met Jen Snyder.
Yeah, Jen's great.
Wonderful, yeah.
Also a suit wearer.
Yeah. She came over to me and she goes, I can't believe it. You look like this and then you did that, and it was like, it just made me very happy.
That's
a nice
a setup punch.
Say.
That's like this idea of like you set up an expectation and you shatter it, that's, I look for that pattern everywhere, and it can happen without words. I think what you're describing is kind of its own joke, because you get up, you're just standing up there with the suit on, being in your 50s sets up a certain expectation. Then you start talking about this weird stuff. Yeah, and it's like that's like a punchline in itself.
It's funny. Another thing about the suit is when I first started doing it. When I first started doing comedy, I would change into like jeans and like casual clothes for comedy. And
out of the suit that you were already wearing?
Yeah. I would have it like
and then
ready.
One day you're like, I forgot to bring my jeans. I'll just wear the suit.
Well, it's funny. I had this bit that I was doing with the jeans and the shirt. I was like, I know what you're thinking. One more guy in a black T-shirt doing comedy. It's like the the Sorting Hat put us all into Louis C.K.
Yeah,
house.
that was the Louis C.K. days where it was. Yeah,
Yeah, it was before we knew.
yeah.
And it did okay. It did okay. And then one night, I just didn't have. Maybe I didn't have a change of clothes, whatever. But I do it with the suit on, and I say, you're probably thinking I'm the only guy who knew how to dress for whatever it was. I think it was
The
Grove
auditorium.
Park,
Yeah, I remember that joke.
And it's like, actually, what happened is the other comics and I went to comedy school together, and the Sorting Hat put me in Bob Newhart house, and boom, that was it. That was the audience telling you that's the way it needs to work. And I wore that suit a long time, just more than anything else.
Yeah, my whole first years, you were
joke.
just always in a suit.
Yeah, it was more about that joke, that one joke than I absolutely wanted to set up low expectations and subvert them, or different expectations.
No, I think that's smart to really think about, like, before you can just be like, what are these words and jokes? But I think you can forget, like, what am I, like, who am I presenting as a person? That's like just as important. Like Cody was talking about doing his special and how he there's like the big three that he's like, nice guy at the deli, and there's a certain string of jokes that he feels like tune them into who he is, and it's really important to do those jokes so then they get the other ones. It feels kind of similar to what you're saying. Like, they need to get tuned in to who you are, and if there's an expectation that you're going to be like a stereotypical dude your age, a white dude your age, then it's like even better if you can, like, surprise them.
Yeah,
you have to keep surprising them. I think as soon as you stop surprising them, they kind of start yawning and get their phones out. And the longer the set, the harder it is to keep, like, surprising them.
One of my favorite moments like that, subverting expectations. I was doing a show at Limerick Junction.
Oh yeah, I just did that room
Yeah.
in Atlanta.
And everybody but me who'd gotten out, and I was wearing like dress pants, a white shirt. I don't think I had a tie or a coat. And I had like the sleeves rolled up, and everybody but me was a person of color, and they were mentioning life as a person of color.
Yeah.
And talking about how their experiences and people's racism and all. It was all really funny stuff. And then I got up and I said, we're hearing all this stuff about, people of color and living life is, and then you got me, and I look like the guy who was mean to Sidney Poitier. And it was like,
you're the reason that life is hard for these people of color. You're like I feel that. I'm the face of, like, the white man,
Yeah. Yeah. And at that time I was definitely the face of, like, I looked like I could have been pulled out of it in the heat of the night.
It's his fault.
Yeah.
There he is. Get him.
But it was, people laughed at that. And that's a deep pull. Mean to Sidney Poitier. But anybody who's like a film buff knows that movie.
It's kind of a funny name too. I think sometimes even if people don't know what you're talking about, if the words sound funny, it can still work. Like I'll laugh at jokes sometimes and I don't really get it, but I just know that it sounds funny and everybody else is laughing. You ever laugh at jokes you don't get?
Moira does one that kills me because I understand the construction even though I don't understand the reference. He talks about it's a bit about a sexual moment and how people think of it wrong, how to do it wrong. Oh, she was talking about in a context where she was selling sex stuff, and like worked at a sex shop.
I could see you like scanning the word choices so carefully in your mind. Like,
but she
you're
talked
canceled.
about,
You're going to get canceled if you say the wrong word.
it was about somebody fisting, and she talked about how people don't understand, what has to happen for that to work, and she made a reference to, I think, a anime where somebody does a big punch and she yells the big punch from the and I don't know anything about that. I can't even repeat the word to because I don't even know what it was. but it was electrifyingly
Right.
funny because I got the structure.
Yeah.
I knew what was going on there, even though I didn't know the specific
Yeah.
joke.
It's not just the words. A lot of what's funny transcends language too. I mean, I like to watch comedy with the sound down sometimes just to see what's happening. That it's like the words will kind of lead me astray, and then you turn the sound down on your favorite comic, and you're like, wow, it actually still is pretty entertaining. You can kind of tell where the punches are just by how they move. And I mean, it's like if you could listen to stand up in another language, and it might still make you laugh sometimes if you like the comedian, there's just so many different things happening in stand up. That's what I love about it. Like, just the farther you go with it, the more it's just like it's an endless, bottomless well of just interesting ways to do it.
Yeah.
And then you have new comics coming up that are always like kind of representing the new waves of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
What's that been like, seeing it, seeing so many waves? I had Petey and Cody on recently, and they were like, there's always like most of the comedians in our scene are always like new. It's always like majority, and even more so since COVID. But then it's like there's these classes, and there's usually like 2 or 3 from each class that actually will make it to like you get to like 5 years, and it's like it's gonna be like you and one other person probably. They came in together,
Yeah,
like,
that's a cool thing.
Yeah, what's it been like? I mean, you've kind of seen, you've been here since the beginning of Asheville comedy, right? Like 15, 16 years ago? Something like?
14. And when I came on the scene, there were people. I mean, Petey was already there. Carrie was. Becca and Allie were already on the scene. Tom Sheave. I don't know if you've ever seen his.
Yeah,
comedy.
I know Tom a little. He was like still around a little when I started, and I'm gonna get him on here. Because part of this podcast is kind of documenting the history of Asheville comedy too. So talking to people like you. But yeah, go ahead.
But no, there were people. I wasn't like from the beginning, but I was pretty close. I think.
Yeah.
I think I was within a year.
Where was like the disclaimer? Was it at the hangar when you started, or was it Athena's?
When I started, the disclaimer, Mike hadn't started yet.
Was Tomato Tuesdays?
It's Tomato Tuesdays at the New French Bar.
Yeah.
I didn't like the tomato
aspect.
Yeah. And, it didn't really affect me that much. I think I got tomatoed once.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a big thing, but it's like, we already have a mechanism for people to express that they don't like comedy.
What a weird way for it to start. Yeah. It's like, isn't it enough to just try to tell jokes and bomb? You got to people throwing food at you. Like, it was a different time, huh?
Because they were foam tomatoes.
That would almost be kind of like gimmicky or weird now, but I guess, comedy dominates the culture now.
Yeah.
So you were there, like, I think it was Louis C.K. Like, that was the time that comedy really started to like become more popular than music, arguably. And then it's just continued. Now it's just like comedy is just everything, everywhere. Yeah. Like, I mean, the podcast, the specials on Netflix. So I feel like you might have started like kind of on the way up to that.
Yeah. I could see that.
Do you feel like it's changed? Like just how people do jokes and like over the...
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, like, for one thing, people. I keep running into people who are like, "Are you intimidated by audiences and how socially aware they are, or like PC or whatever?" But comics are socially aware. I think the majority of comics don't do shitty things on stage because they don't want to do shitty things,
right. Yeah.
And I think that's
a few ones are loud, and everybody thinks it's all of us, but it's really just a few people doing offensive.
And that's what's frustrating me. I've seen some very big comics in my age group who are like, "Oh, I'll never do a college room again because you can't say anything to them."
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah. There you go. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have your experience or anything. I go into a room full of college people, and they're my best audience.
Yeah.
And when I saw Jerry whining about that, he was like doing this bit where he does this lisping 70s gay imitation.
Yeah.
Of a guy.
The gay French king scrolling through the phone. Is it that one?
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Yeah. I can't remember, but it was like, and he was like, they were being PC by not laughing. And I was like, they were being people who didn't find your joke funny.
Yeah.
Your joke wasn't funny.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
They
didn't laugh. So you got your answer right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was them being PC to him. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And that frustrates me, especially with Jerry Seinfeld, because his performance, like on 82 or 81, on HBO's Young Comedians, got me doing comedy.
Oh, that's interesting. So you go all the way back.
Yeah.
Because Seinfeld was the biggest show in the 90s. Like I was there for that. And like young people now don't know, like he was the biggest. He was like the only comedian we all saw every day in the 90s, because comedy kind of died in the 90s a little bit,
Yeah.
But he was just crushing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was long before the show.
Yeah.
And he just did this tremendous set.
Yeah.
There was like little things like, they sell you socks and they've got the little hooks on them. Anybody got a little closet that they're putting their socks? And it was killing me. It was murdering me. And that's what really got me to go out to. There weren't open mics in Fayetteville, North Carolina in the early 80s. There was a talent show. So I had to go to a talent show and try and do stand-up.
That's and for the first time too. So right? So you didn't even get to like do it at the Root Bar for like a bunch of times before. You're just first time at some talent show.
Yeah.
A room that's probably not dialed in for comedy or warmed up for it. How did that go?
It went pretty well.
Oh, really?
I mean, and there again, like I think I grade myself on a curve sometimes because I remember it as being really good.
Yeah.
And I did have some bomb sets early on, but not that one.
Yeah.
And I did the thing that I did that talent show every week for a while, and then people started asking me to do little things like I would go to a local company. They wanted me to do their outdoor festival. And I bombed so freaking hard.
Corporate outdoors? That's weird. How did you bombed? It seemed like that would work real well.
Yeah, it was bad. But
I love it when people just have no awareness. They're like, let's throw a joke teller up there. It's like the room. There's a lot of factors. Like it just can't work in most places.
Yeah, and even if you're killing, you don't know you're killing because they're spread all over the place.
And it's like, if you don't have a low ceiling, it's just going up into the outer space, so you don't hear the. Yeah. The laughs.
So like from 82 to like 85, I did comedy whenever I could, but it wasn't like it was now. And
that's crazy though that you go back to the 80s. I mean, that's awesome.
But
no one else in our scene did comedy in the 80s.
I literally didn't do stand-up from 85 to 2010.
Yeah, and I love that joke about men hugging in bars.
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite bits, too, where the act out where you're like, I've missed you. That's really, really funny.
But there again, you got to do, I feel like I'm really going for it when I do it. Like
Commitment.
Yeah. I feel like I'm really going for that emotion for that moment. But when I went to Coffee Underground. I heard about that open mic on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so I looked into it, and then I went after work one Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Farr put me on stage. He was the host. And like, I need room for one more, and he puts me on. And I did 5 minutes that I had been like, on and off for 25 years, digging in, and it went really well.
The material had aged well.
Yeah, I mean,
like wine.
It wasn't like old 80s stuff. Like I've been currently thinking.
Oh, okay. You weren't like Reagan. What's up with this guy?
Yeah, exactly right. That in the first month I came back, after I did that mic, I probably did more comedy that first month than I did from 82 to 85.
Because the infrastructure was there? Because there was, because it's, I mean, now that's why people are moving out of the Southeast, when they get good. And there's mics everywhere now. You can go to the Tri-Cities. So, I'm trying to sell this idea on this podcast that like in 10 years, the Southeast is going to have its own like scene. It's the New York and the LA thing. It's Chicago is not the way you need to do it because
well, Atlanta's got one. For sure.
Yeah, Atlanta's super strong. Yeah, but there's enough infrastructure here to make us all good, and we're gonna have our own flavor. We're not trying to do it the New York way. This is the Southeast. We're not dumb. We're from the South, but we got our own weird emerging humor.
Right. And I have. I've seen people who are really good and are like, "Do I need to go to New York?" And what I tell them is almost always the same thing. Don't move to New York. Don't move to LA to make it. Move there when you feel like when you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Like you've because right now
you're not growing as much as you need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have this. I feel like our environment is a lot more nurturing for a good comic.
For sure. Because I've gone to the cities and done their mics.
Yeah.
100% comics.
Yeah.
3 minutes. I would not be doing it still. It's just too demoralizing. Like we have actual audiences, and I mean, I think it's a great place to.
And all of them competing for the spots that they have.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to do that. And that's exactly what I was planning to do. Was move to New York in the 80s because back then you had to be in one of the hubs. You had to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, like 3 years I didn't do as much stand up as I did a month once the internet happened.
Yeah, right.
And people could do social media.
Yeah.
But I was planning to move to New York. I'd been kicked out of the acting program at ECU for being a bad actor, which I 100% was. And at the time I was.
You hadn't
really
learned
was.
to commit yet?
I had hair.
Okay.
And I cared what people thought about the way I looked.
Yeah.
You know, and I still do. I still have that vanity.
Hey, Jen. Oh, did you just get your hair cut? We were just talking about hair. It looks great. We used to both have hair.
Hey there.
Yeah, you're saying in the 80s you had hair with some like more vanity or something associated with that?
Yeah, different kind of vanity.
But you're also just young, right? I mean, isn't that just being young is like entitlement and feeling like then you have suffer humiliation after humiliation over the decades and you learn like I'm just happy to be still alive.
Yeah. I mean, you really do. I think, and you know, when I had a full hair, I was really worried about looking ridiculous in front of people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't loosen up and do the work.
Yeah.
And the constant criticism I had from the person who conducted that class was that I was in my head. And I was.
Yeah.
There's no question.
I'm still in mine most of the time. I'm working on it, but
well, performing is different than acting.
Right.
You know,
you need to be like living the character in the scene and
Yeah. And I've done a couple of commercials. I've done some sketch work, and I'm decent at it now. And it's because I still have vanity, but I have a different kind. And I don't, I'm not terrified that I won't look, like somebody people want to date or something. It's like in your 20s, that's a big thing. Like, you don't want to look like somebody won't want.
Yeah. Embracing going bald is a really good life lesson, because at first it's like, oh shit. I mean, I had this just amazing, like just red, like curly, like boyish locks. I mean, it was incredible. Mm-hmm. But I think it's like, now I'm like, all right, I need like a personality, jokes, I gotta get by on other things. And I think it's been good for me, It's just like getting older.
I think Jason Statham did us all a favor.
Yeah.
But that was different. And then the reason I didn't go to New York, like 25 years old, I fall in love for the first time in my life at a woman I met at the last comedy show I ever did in the 80s. And I was like, we have this, I was planning to save up, move to New York that summer and live dirt poor.
Whoa.
And
this alternate dimension of the multiverse where art moves to
Yeah.
Maybe you're not even called Art. Did you? Is this
Yeah, I wasn't Art then.
Yeah. So is this other version of you that like
Yeah.
been doing comedy for like 40 years now in New York?
Yeah. I mean, that'd be like, and the reason I didn't go is I had never been in love before. I liked it.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And I hadn't even had really, I'd had some dates, but not even really a relationship. And I was 25, you know? And
So you started getting laid, and you're like, well, I'll go to New York next year.
And I couldn't drag her. I couldn't leave her.
And then 20 years passed.
And I couldn't drag her through it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I always thought, like, I'm going to do some more comedy. But, the way that it opened up as a possibility was when the internet and social media became a thing.
When the tech caught up to...
Yeah. And then suddenly there's little scenes springing up all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, Asheville has a nicer, better, more vibrant scene than a lot of much bigger cities.
Totally. And it's old because y'all started it. So like I came in 8.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And when I came in, it was like a strong group, like you, like Grayson. I mean, there's a lot of names. If I start naming, I'll forget somebody and feel bad. But it was like people I could look to that knew how to write jokes, knew how to like rock the mic. So for somebody like me coming in, it was like easier to get good because there were examples of it, you know. And then I've traveled around the Southeast and found the same thing, that Asheville has a pretty mature scene.
Yeah.
And the Greenville Asheville connection too is interesting, where you had like Tom, like Peachy Tom, and Katie and Chris Weather. Like there's those two cities really. Y'all in Asheville and Greenville really were kind of like the origins of all the things that we're doing now. Like people that come along now don't even know. That's part of what this podcast is like documenting that story.
Have you ever done the Monday mic at
I have, yeah, but not in a while. It's great. It's a great room. Such a great room.
It is. Yeah. But when that was the first one I did, the Coffee Underground. Mm-hmm. And it was, back then it was pews, church pews. And it was shoulder to shoulder. I mean, you were really sitting like this with people. I mean, there's people that backed up into the little hallway to the door. Yeah. And it was like that for like the first year. Huh. You know, and I've never seen it like that.
I wonder why
in recent years.
That's almost like the opposite of the way most comedy had, or it was more packed then, huh?
Yeah.
And it's a nice little black box room, so you got that compression.
Right.
I think it's so important. It's like what we were saying about doing corporate outside. Like outside is hard. In some little like box where you're like crammed in, that's that's great for laughs.
Yeah, I don't know what changed over the years. I know that they don't have that. It's like you say, it's a good room, and I enjoy doing it, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun.
So you were lucky that kind of, you're getting started and you got this great room you could go to be excited. I think it's really important to like have something good you can do with comedy.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, I was so bad at it that it would just to be able to go to the Odd and see like all the senior, like Grayson Morris was around, like Jason Webb, Cody, just to see what it is in that room. And it's like, I wasn't really good, but I got to be there for something that was so good. And that gave me helped me to dream, okay, maybe in 5 years I'll be up there, like getting laughs, comfortable on stage, able to take a pause.
Yeah. Which although is true, you are comfortable, you are able to take a pause, and you are funny.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, what I'm finding is when I think I'm getting confident and good, I just need to take a trip to like Atlanta or somewhere like that. And that'll knock me back down pretty quick, you know.
Isn't that the fun of it, though? I mean, like, just this week, like last Saturday, I was doing a show in Marshall, and it went wonderful. It was great. As a matter of fact, I can't wait to get the video from it.
Yeah.
And then I do one in Chattanooga. It goes great. And then I do one I'm not going to really name because I don't want it. It's newer and it's just developing. But that room was full of people there. They were there to see comedy. There was nothing about them that you could like blame it on them.
Yeah.
And every one of us bombed, and I think I bombed the worst out of all of us. And it was like it's nice that you have that little, up, down, and you just got to accept it as part of the life.
Yeah, because I'll get to this place where I'm like, I would never bomb like that hard again because I've been doing it this many years. It's like, oh, you will, the worst bomb you were at, the worst bomb I've ever had, which was like pretty recently. It was at the Hillbilly Jam in Maggie Valley.
Oh yeah.
No one did great, but they hated me. I mean, it just really got, I would love a rematch, but I still am like, and what a great lesson. I mean, it haunts me to this day, like just my awareness of how bad it can be,
Yeah.
Like you need those. I mean, those are the ones that make you good, right? If you got up and they just laughed at every right spot every time, like you wouldn't grow. You wouldn't learn about yourself. I mean, it feels good for your ego. You need some of those so you don't like quit.
Right.
But
and
Hillbilly Jam in Maggie Valley, Tennessee.
That was brutal. That was brutal. It's funny that I always talk about the transition bomb for me, because there's like, at first bombing hurts every single time, and then it gets to a point where nobody ever likes to bomb, but you're able to dig out what good you can figure from it and laugh it off. And I remember the night that happened for me. I had gone down to do a show in Indian Trail, or a little town around Charlotte. And it was in a coffee shop. People came to see comedy. Should have been a great show. And I was like, I'm going to go tear it up. And I went out there and I was like bombing hard. And I was like, I'm not having this. And then I comedied at them harder and bombed harder. And like, I bombed for 15 minutes. And like, I get in the car and I'm like, messaging Tom Sheave, and I'm like, it was like we're cracking up over the bomb, and I'm like, it was like I went into a room full of dogs and made a high pitched noise. They weren't mad, they weren't offended. They were like,
Yeah,
and that to me was where I could comfortably bomb.
Yeah,
it's because you're having enough good shows. But the other thing that happened with that, you mentioned a rematch. A couple of years later, I got a rematch for that room, and it went really well.
That's nice. I would love a rematch with them. I don't even expect it to go well, but I am aware that like I just jumped up there and started trying to do my jokes, and it was like you need to take a moment to like try to like honor their culture, or at least just acknowledge that you guys are a group of people that I've got these liberal glasses on. I'm from like the crazy city of Asheville. I'm just up here. It quickly became like, oh, he thinks he's better than us, or that was my read on it, and then I just couldn't get out of it. And,
I think that's what happened to my set too. I absolutely got up there and just tried to do my bits.
Yeah, and it was like I should have just sat down and just like tried to, connect. I'm still trying to process it, but it was really good. It was a good experience to be just. I mean, and it's really nice that. The community of like we all see each other bomb and we all see each other kill if you stick around long enough, so it really gets to be like family level things where you've like we don't just like go to work together. I mean, we've seen all kinds of crazy things happen. It's like, oh, remember that room we did together that many years ago? Like that's what's the great secret of stand-up is just the community and all these shared experiences you get to have with people. I mean, it's the most diverse. Like just the ages, cultural backgrounds, gender, whatever you want to split. It's such a diverse community, and we go into battle together, and we watch somebody might kill on Tuesday night, and then they might on Wednesday night. The same stuff doesn't work,
Yeah.
And you see them like what, and it's like just experiencing all that together. It's very cool.
Yeah, and it's fun to. So, I have mixed feelings about addressing a bomb with the audience, But one of my favorite things is when we kind of give a wink to each other, comedians, that I'm bombing right now. It's like some little throwaway or some change in wording of a bit or something that says like, I know what's happening here. I'm aware of it, but not to the audience.
Yeah, it's a little Easter egg for those of us that have heard the bit before. Or when you're like, the comic that's before you is walking and you're going up and you give them a fist bump and they're just like, ooh, good luck with these motherfuckers. And you're like, that was like pretty rough, And then you get that delusion in your head like, all right, 3 people in a row have bombed, but I'll get them. I'll get them, and then you totally don't,
Right. It's like somebody going back to vanity and ego.
Yeah.
I totally walk up after I've seen 3 people bomb and think, oh, but it's me. I'll do great.
Yeah.
You know? And I've taken that lesson.
You need some delusion. That's one of the themes on this too. You need some delusion to keep going. You know, if you really look at it practically, there's no reason to keep going. Like, I think a little bit of delusion is your friend.
You got to have it. And we used to open for the dueling pianos at Elaine's. Did for like a year or two, maybe.
I heard about that. Was it the Grove Park gig?
Yeah,
yeah.
It was every Friday night. Elaine's was at the Grove
It's like
Park.
rich people, right? Like rich, is fancy.
And the first time we did it, there was like 300 people there.
Yeah.
And we clobbered. And then every time after that, it was just people trickling in before their show started. And we would bomb except Petey, who has this wonderful joke for that building. And once I saw beer come out of a man's nose when Petey did that bit. So it was really it was perfect, and he would make himself a hero every time. And I would see him sitting on the side, and when one of us would do a joke and it didn't land, it would offend him. He would be like, that's a perfectly good joke. It'd be like you came to dinner and turned up your nose at this wonderful thing. It just like really got under his skin. You know? I think especially because he was watching. He had a good set almost every time because he had written that wonderful, perfect joke. You know?
It's nice to have like a 1 or 2 good jokes when you're starting out. You know, when you like, you just there's so much things not working. Like you remember like your first couple jokes that would just always work. It's like, oh, okay, I just need more of these.
Yeah, openers.
And it's like, yeah,
the
exactly.
Bob Newhart house was a good opener for me for a long time.
Yeah.
It made me wear that suit long after I
and
probably...
it's like, this is me. It's like a good first thing. It's like, let's talk about me for a second, then we'll get to my experiences.
Yeah, and if you got a good opener, then you got them on your side.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing I'm playing around with a lot. Is like there's this idea that you gotta get a laugh quickly, and so they're on your side and they want to keep listening. But then there's also this idea that I'm really getting into where like you have to talk about today or the room or what's happening now up front, because then it's an authentic, real thing, and then you slowly transition into like material and they don't notice. So I'm always trying to like balance those two. I want the laugh right away, but I want to start out being like, hey, it's just me talking about today.
Yeah.
But there's been some times where I've gone like, the farther you get from home, I think the more you need to play it safe for me. There's been some time where I drove out to like Raleigh and I was like, I'm going to talk about today for a couple minutes, you know? Nothing funny happened today. And I think they lost, they lose confidence in you. Then when you start doing your polished material, it's too late. You know, you never really get them back.
Yeah. I think something that can be effective along those lines, it's because I know what you're talking about. You know, you kind of meander and I've done that so many times. But one thing I do try and do is like if I'm out of town, I get to a venue early. I wrote a joke about the venue, and I pay attention to the person before me and do a callback. And those two things tell the audience, oh, this guy's connected.
Yeah.
You know,
he's here with us right now. We're not watching him on a screen. He's in the room with us.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's
so
like,
important. I think it's so important.
Yeah. And the audience sees you connecting with other parts and the venue and other parts of the show.
Yeah.
Like he didn't just come out of a green room. Okay, it's my turn.
Yeah. What city am I in? I don't care about y'all here. Yeah. PD has mentioned that he will do that with like him being like, here's the bartender's name. Give it up for them. Like he'll make a point to like acknowledge certain things in the room to reset the energy, bring them into the now, and then he slips into his material.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do have to kind of have tricks like that, I think. Or yeah, that I really like that, writing a joke about the room, you know, or the place you're in, because it doesn't even have to be a great joke. It's just it shows them that you're a real present person.
Yeah. It can be like there's a place called Nickel Point Brewing in
Raleigh, right? I've done that. Yeah, with what's his name? Wood. Tyler Wood.
Yeah,
I think he runs the show there.
And that one, the double-decker bus.
Yeah.
Like the first thing you say is like,
somebody has to acknowledge this bus.
Right. And it's something like, for me, I think it was, hey, it's really great to be here, but I really wish they would have cleaned up the place after the Beatles recorded their album earlier today or something like that.
Yeah.
And it hit pretty hard because people got it. But it's fun to have rooms like that where you can just... There's sometimes where I really try and pick a room apart visually, and I can't. I can't come up with something, and that frustrates me. Or there are places where there's so much coming at you, like the Zoom room.
Yeah. Where do I begin?
Right. It's really hard to find the thing.
A flea market of like weird
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. I mean, the odd's kind of like that too. It's like the ghosts, the dripping ghosts are like the standard go-to, but there's a lot of weird stuff happening.
The first time I did Odd, I was wearing that coat and tie. Mm-hmm. And I said, the first thing I said when I got on stage was, I think it's hilarious that in a room with pickled Barbie dolls, the thing that gets a second look is a man in a coat and tie. And I just kind of flipped that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the Odd's great that way because I've been going to that room and playing music for 15 years and like they all stay the same age, but like I'm becoming more and more like, what's this guy doing here? Because it is like, it's always going to be that very alt kind of punky, younger thing, which is really important to me because I right away, the audiences I started doing the best with early on were like older audiences who had bought a ticket because they're like, oh, he's a dad, he has kids and he can talk about that stuff. But I don't just want to be that kind of comedian. Like I want to be able to, like you were saying about people see you in the suit and then they are surprised you say all this weird stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's important to me for it to still be able to connect to the young, grungy, liberal out of the box. But I really like going to Kingsport, Tennessee and trying to connect with a rural, older audience too. Like I mean, I don't think that either one is lesser. I think it's cool to try to like be able to get good enough to where you can kind of tweak your act to fit the room, I mean, that's right. Another great skill of comedy is like just learning to read rooms. Like how many of us are really aware of like, I've gained so much awareness about different cultures and different rooms just by doing comedy.
Yeah.
Seeing what works and doesn't work.
And sometimes you'll have a situation where you have an assumption about the room in front of you.
Yeah.
And then you won't do things that generally work for you. And then you find out at some point your assumption was wrong.
Yeah. The next person gets up and does the jokes on like weed or whatever, and they laugh. And you're like, oh, man, okay. They are cool. Yeah. I don't know. We're at an hour 20.
Okay.
Did you want to call it there?
Why don't we call it?
Yeah.
I'll go drive strangers around for money.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much for coming by. It's great to talk to you.
Same here. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.